Alright, what is up? Um, what is up, Facebook, I guess? Because I feel like posting a video to Facebook. So, if you guys know me, you know I'm a soccer fan, and you probably know I'm left leaning politically. Um, so, from those two things, you might be able to infer that I've at least somewhat been following the United States Soccer Federation lawsuit filed against them by the U.S. women's national team. And I think there has been a lot of good coverage, and I think there's been some missing coverage. So I'm going to briefly outline the good coverage, but what I really wanted to do was talk about the missing coverage. So the good coverage is people are realizing that the gender pay gap in soccer is absurd. The women make more money for the USSF, the United States Soccer Federation, than the men do, and they're paid 37% of what the men are paid, and they make more money. Anyway, so the things that are being covered well are essentially the sexism. Um, they talk about the history, which, you know, is good for younger people to understand. Well, you know, women's sports at one point in time was not profitable, or at least not nearly as profitable as men's sports. Um, that was a couple decades ago, but if you go back even a few more decades, like, women weren't allowed to play sports really. It's still like super frowned upon in some countries for women to even play soccer. But now we've gotten past that. It's great. People love the U.S. women's team. Megan Rapinoe, Tobin Heath, all these folks are becoming household names. Alex Morgan, of course. Um, so that's the good coverage. The bad coverage, or the I shouldn't say bad, but the non-existent coverage is the lack of critique of our current system that allowed this to happen from a economics perspective, I would say. Um, so, uh, before you call me a Marxist or communist or whatever, because I'm sure that's coming, this is this is it shows a flaw in capitalism. And what do I mean by that? Well, capitalism works best when you have a free market. So, free movement, or free buyer's market, so I can go to any grocery store and buy whatever I want, and free labor market, I can work at any grocery store. Um, but there are like Adam Smith style critiques of capitalism, not Karl Marx critiques. What I'm going to go over right now is an Adam Smith style critique. Um, what the most known critique of capitalism is monopolies, where one company owns the entire market, and what can happen sometimes is they can spend an absurd, or they can ask for an absurd amount of money for like a necessary product. So an example of that would be, um, you know, if you can only get electricity from one company, they might jack up the prices, and if they do, you can't do anything about it. So this lesser known critique of capitalism, which I'm about to go over, is called a monopsony. So it's like monopoly, but with an S. Monopsony. And it's basically a buyer's monopoly. That's what both the men and the women of the United States and every other country's international soccer teams have a monopsony, or almost a complete monopsony. So, what does that mean? It means the United States Soccer Federation is the only potential buyer for US born soccer players. Because, like, I'll use an example. So, Alex Morgan, phenomenal soccer player. Morgan, so she plays for the US. She can't go and play for England, or she can't go and play for the French Football Federation. She has to play here because that's the country she's from. And if she did play for France or something, it would significantly decrease the value of the product being sold by by FIFA, essentially, the international soccer tournament organizers. So that's what I mean when I say monopsony, when I say buyer's monopoly. That's what I mean. So, what are the ways of dealing with a monopsony? It depends what the exact monopsony is, but step one, labor. Unionized labor. Okay, awesome. All the women on the World Cup team have formed their own union and demanded higher pay. Okay, they did that. They have not gotten higher pay, or certainly not what their labor is giving the soccer federation in profit. So, step two, file lawsuit. Boom. Women are killing it so far. Lawsuit filed. So, if you couldn't file a lawsuit, that would be a failure of capitalism, obviously, because there's a flaw of capitalism that I just laid out, the monopsony, and that would be a failure of capitalism, essentially. But since we have courts, there's a potential for our system of regulated capitalism to work to fairly solve this problem. We'll see if that happens. But if that does not happen, our system has essentially failed. In this, obviously, we aren't going to go like extinct as a humanity, but this is a form of oppression. A minor form, obviously, people will throw out non sequiturs and say, "What about starving children in Africa or something?" But it truly is a form of oppression if you, in terms of like being paid what you're worth and being paid comparable to what your male counterparts are getting paid. All right. Yeah, and if they can't get more money, or if they can't get paid what they're worth through the courts. Maybe there'll have to be laws changed, which, you know, good luck. Uh, Maybe they'll have to strike. No one wants that. So, courts, please do the right thing. Regulate capitalism properly. Please. Um, yeah, that's that's it. Oh, solutions. I should talk about solutions. I knew there was something else I wanted to talk about. So ideally, you tie the men's USMNT pay to the USWNT's pay. So they make the same amount, they get the same bonuses for, winning the World Cup or getting to the quarterfinals of the World Cup. They get the same training facilities, they get the same funds going to staff, they get the same, you know, marketing team, budget, everything, top to bottom, the same, men and women. Um, let's see. I mean, that's like my knee jerk reaction, which I think is, at least right now, the best solution that I can think of. Even though I'm a wonky soccer fan, so I can see some possible issues coming up. So, like the Olympics, for example, the women's Olympics for soccer is actually a big deal, whereas um, the men's soccer Olympics, no country cares about that. Like in the soccer world, no country does, and it's FIFA's actually made it a developmental tournament, so only players 23 and under. It's a 23 and under tournament. The Olympics is for men's soccer. So, it's a little weird if the men make the same as the women for that. And then sometimes, you're going to have the Copa Centenario, which happened in 2016 for the men, which was a huge tournament. But they're not in that every 4 years or anything, or every 2 years. There's no consistent schedule, and schedules are constantly changing. And for the women as well, like, you know, the She Believes Cup, I think that's like um, that's a more recent thing. And how do you compensate for tournaments that we don't know about yet that are going to exist 10 years down the road or whatever. Um, so yeah, there are some problems just tying the pays together, and like you can't just set it and forget it, I guess is what I'm saying. But I think that's the closest thing you'd get to solving the problem now. But a bigger issue is that, as I said earlier, the men's team also is a monopsony. So if you tie the women's pay to the men's pay, it still has the potential to be problematic down the line due to the inherent flaws, the inherent Adam Smith style criticisms of capitalism, the monopsony, which the USSF has on both the men and the women. But yeah, just my thoughts. Um, and yeah, if you've listened this far, thank you. That's awesome. Um, I've been thinking about doing videos for, last few months just because I've been reading more, and I've thought about like doing book reviews a little bit. I don't know. But yeah, here's one of the books I've been reading, so possible possible teaser. I'm like this much through. It's very good though. We've Got People by Ryan Grimm. Anyway, it's a political book though, so if you don't like political books, don't read it. Anyway, thank you. I'll stop rambling. Bye.